ever have one of those nights? Those nights where it's just you and your mates on top of the world and no one can bring you down. You're out on the town and it's abject chaos, drinking all you can until you throw up and then you do it all again. Getting potted off your twat on whatever you find. Pills, bags, whatever. Starting fights for no reason. Then wondering why you kicked out of places and then fighting the bouncers throwing you out. You know, best nights of your life? Those nights come once in a blue moon for most, but for me, it was every night of the week, and twice on Sundays, and fuck me, I loved it. Honestly, I can't remember the most of late 80s and early 90s. It's like trying to watch your memories on TV, but with your readers on. I'll never forget how it made me feel. Like a god. Not like a biblical god. Like a god like Alan Shearer. Although the amount of drunk and distorted, it's probably closer to George Best. Me and the lads, we were inseparable. There was me, Snake Eyes, Juliet, Bravo, Lenny and Chunky. I know what you're thinking and you're wrong. We didn't call him Chunky because he was fat. He just happened to be fat and he kept saying his favourite food was chunky soup. We dabbled with calling him minestrone for a while, but it felt forced, so we settled for Chunky. We did everything together and we each had our roles. Chunky, of course, was in charge of food, the fat prick. You'd think it'd be his perfect job for him, but we nearly had to can him, as all he brought us to eat was fucking soup. He was useless. Generally, a greasy, dirty kebab was the better option. Juliet was our lookout whenever we did something we shouldn't have, and Bravo was there to make sure the mopeds were there for us to get away quickly. Before you ask, they are their real names. Lenny was dim-witted enough to be the fall guy, so if we got caught, anyone would take one look at him and say, have you got someone to look after him? Of Mice and Ben vibes, you get me? I was second in command, answering only to Snake Eyes, our fearless leader. Although he wasn't only the cause of our problems, but he was usually the solution too. He was a massive pain in the ass, though. His sheer confidence and tenacity enticed us to follow him. If he said jump, we'd all say how high, and Lenny would actually jump. He was the cause of all of our problems because the man was absolutely tapped, but at the same time, he was meticulous to the point. He always wore leather gloves to leave no trace. Everyone knew it was him. It was an open secret. The police never had anything concrete on him, so he always walked. Fingerprinting, DNA and all that shit was relatively new then. It was flawed. He knew how to test the limits. He was always picking fights, and we'd always have to get involved. At the time, I didn't mind it. I loved it. I lived for it. It's a crazy adrenaline rush that's hard to describe, but imagine doing that every day of your life until years on end. It's addictive beyond belief. No doubt enhanced by the narcotics and alcohol we took from sunrise to sunset. In spite of his propensity to break noses indiscriminately, at times he felt he could justify it. And those times had the potential to cause rifts in our group. We loved each other, don't get me wrong. We were one big fucked up family. But we disagreed with each other at times. Usually we'd fall out for a day, someone would buy a round, hands were shaken, nothing more was said. All friends again. But there's only so many times you can do that before it comes to a head. And I can remember the exact day, the exact moment even, it all came to a head. June the 11th, 1990, England v Ireland. Our first match in the World Cup. We all remember it. It was the one where Gary Lineker shat himself on the pitch. We watched the game in a pub on the outskirts of town. We weren't exactly welcome, but everyone was so stricken with World Cup fever, they let it slide, provided we were on our best behaviour. We were, for a bit. Now, our town back then wasn't the most diverse of places, but there were patches. So this pub was full of England's finest, even though there was one table at the back occupied by 6 or 7 of the Irish contingent. We called it St James's Gate because every inch of the table was covered with Guinness, whether it is in a glass or not. For those who don't remember the match, it was largely uneventful. Lineker scored after 9 minutes, and then he dropped a log in the second half. And so we were buzzing, absolutely loving it, because we reckon we've got this in the bag. We're singing, chanting, telling the Irish lot where they can go and how they can get there, the lot. But then, in the 73rd minute, Kevin Sheedy scores an absolute blinder from just inside the box, and they equalise. You could feel the air get sucked out of the room. You could have heard a pin drop in the millisecond between the England fans going silent and the Irish fans going absolutely, totally ballistic. There's Guinness everywhere. They're jumping up, hugging each other. And then this one lad, couldn't have been more than 19, he gets on the table and gives it the big un to us lot. It gives us as good as he got. Honestly, in hindsight, it was an absolute masterclass in shithousery. But this is where it starts to get eggy, because at this point, one of the English lot ripped the lad off the table and started laying into him. Didn't last long, because the bouncers piled in and threw them out. And after that, well, the mood wasn't exactly lifted, but it was better. But that wasn't enough for Snake Eyes. I was at the bar, and I glanced over. I saw that look in his eyes, almost glazed, but yet somehow laser-focused. I knew exactly what was coming. And the second he finished his pint and slammed the glass down, I knew how little time I had to stop it. He stormed out with only one thing in his mind, teaching that Irish lad a lesson, and instinctively I shot out after him. Practically took out half the pub between us in the process, and obviously that caught the attention of our group, so they came barrelling out too. By the time I made it outside, Snake Eyes was nowhere to be seen. However, the bonus of him seeing red is he'd breathe and grunt like an asthmatic bulldog, so you could easily deduce where he was. Honestly, hearing those visceral noises emanating from a direction that only got darker and more isolated from civilization is one of the most chilling things I've ever had the misfortune to experience. So I ran until I could run no more, but it wasn't enough. By the time everyone caught up and asked me what was happening, there was a blood-curdling scream nearby. Even though I had fuck all in me, I started running again without a thought, this time with everybody else in tow. There was little but darkness except for a speck of light not too far off. The underpass. That's where they were. Screams only getting louder as we approached it confirmed it. It couldn't have been more than a couple 100 yards, but the fatigue and the relentless screaming made it feel like miles. Once there, we were greeted with a scene from a horror film. White walls and lights of the underpass, offset by the pool of blood on the floor, expanding by the second. And in the middle of that pool of blood was the Irish lad, struggling as best he could, but fading fast, and Snake Eyes on top of him, absolutely going to town. I reckon it's the most gruesome thing I've ever laid my eyes on. Before I could act, Lenny goes in almost instinctively. He doesn't know what's going on. It's not really his fault, you know. If Snake Eyes did it, it must be good enough for him. And if Lenny had touched this lad, he wouldn't have stopped, so I needed to curb it right now. I gathered up every inch of energy I had left, and I punched him in the face. And he did fuck all but make him see red. He forgot about the Irish lad and proceeded to kick the shit out of me. So everyone piled in to get him off me. Everyone's trying to subdue Lenny, and it's literally taking all of them to do it, but eventually they get him back down to earth. But somehow this fracas doesn't grab Snake Eyes' attention one bit. He's still locked in, absolutely laying into that lad like there's no one else in the world. There was no more I could do, given my state. I tried my best to signal the guys to get him off, but I had nothing left. Thankfully, once they subdued Lenny and he'd seen sense, he realised he needed to stop Snake Eyes, not help him. And trust me, he didn't need much help. Chunky came in and helped me up, and that was it. This was the moment where everything came to a head. There was me on one side of the underpass, Snake Eyes on the other, and the near lifeless carcass on the floor between us. Chunky's there trying in vain to see if he's all right. Anyone with a brain cell could see he wasn't. He was alive, thank fuck, but barely. I wish I could say I give this big rah-rah speech to rally the troops, but I didn't. Didn't need to. We shared a look. That's all we needed, a look. Listen, this is a Sounds like a vain attempt just to justify it, but we did scrap, you know. But one thing we never did was attack. Maybe the fight was carried on the next time we got together, but everyone was always able to walk away. We looked at each other and then at the lifeless body on the ground and back to each other. None of us knew what to say or how to say it. We knew this was it. As a unit, as a group, as friends, we were done. There was no coming back for it. But our options were limited and none of them were good. Do the 6 of us leave the Irish lad there, essentially sentencing him to death? Do the 5 of us walk away and leave him with Snake Eyes, which is fundamentally the same thing? Or do we give Snake Eyes as good as he gave? Snake Eyes could feel it too. He knew he lost us. So he reacted the only way he knew. He stared me dead in the eyes and charged at me. If he was going out swinging. But he didn't even get to swing. Lenny stretched out his tree-trunk arm and knocked him for 6, leaving us now with 2 unconscious men in the middle of the underpass. Suddenly our options were much less limited. Now our shattered group had no leader. But I stepped up, thought on my feet, and I directed traffic anyway. We couldn't take the Irish lad to hospital or we'd all go down, and none of us were willing to go down for Snake Eyes anymore. So we decided to get him somewhere closer to town where it was easy for him to get help. Lenny helped the Irish lad up, like a sacrificial lamb almost. There was very little life left in him and he was still clinging on to it. I remember walking out of the underpass, taking one last look at Snake Eyes. His unconscious body just sprawled out in a pool of blood that wasn't his. I was overcome with rage and sadness, thinking, why have I wasted years of my life following this person? What the fuck have I been doing the whole time? But I knew right then dwelling on Snake Eyes was the least of my concerns. I gave him one last look, turned my back, and that was the last time I ever saw him. We decided the best thing to do was find the nearest payphone, call an ambulance and leave the lad there. Then we rang the police and told them where they could find Snake Eyes. We knew there was a risk he'd dob us all in, even though we did nothing except to stop it. But by that time, nobody gave a fuck. It sounds horrendous, and I'm not justifying my actions, but at least we tried to get him help. After that, we basically said our goodbyes and left. Not a word was actually said, just a quick nod each. That was the last time I saw any of them. I went straight home, packed a bag and got the hell out of Dodge, and I assumed they did the same. I knew it wouldn't be the last I'd hear about the whole ordeal. I only found out more than a couple of days later. The ambulance found the Irish lad, but it was too late. He was dead. Regardless, he was never going to make it. The police found Snake Eyes and arrested him. To his credit, not only did he confess to the whole thing, but he also made it quite clear it was him alone and none of us were accountable in any way. I don't think the police were actually asked about us. They were just happy they finally got something that would stick on Snake Eyes, getting him and the rest of us off the streets. That's one upside to murder, I guess. There's no good way to say it, but this whole ordeal has done me the world of good. I'm thankful for it. It opened my eyes to what a shit life I've been living, wasting my formative years under the thumb of this absolute head the ball, letting him make all my decisions for me and dragging me into all of his problems. Like I said, it felt great at the time, but hindsight's 2020 and it's now 2025. When I left, I settled in a bigger town, I started a new life, new job, I got married, had kids. None of which would have been possible if I'd still been living my reckless wreckhead life. When I told my wife about my past, she was understandably shocked. Well, I'd be worried if she wasn't. But she accepted it and understood all of that has allowed me to become the man I am today. So, in a way, I say she's thankful too. You know what I mean? I try my best to block it out. For the most part, I have. Yeah, there are still pockets of things that remind me of it, but they're few and far between. The reason why I'm talking about now is a few weeks ago we passed the anniversary, June the 11th. Unbelievable. 35 years and I can still remember it like yesterday. I've lived an entire second life in that time. And I think about that, and the Irish lad never got to live. He'd be about my age. He could have done all the things I got to do, but no, he was robbed of them because he dared to go out with his mates and watch the football. I went back a couple of days after the anniversary. First time I've been there since. Not much has changed. Small towns never do. Pubs were all there, maybe with Polaroids of our faces behind the bar. Felt weird, almost like seeing an old friend you'd lost touch with. Whilst fun to reminisce, I was there for a reason, with two places I needed to go, the florist and the underpass. I was overcome with this need to repay my respects and get some closure from the guilt I'd been racked with all this time. I always told myself I did everything I could. But sometimes trying to do your best doesn't mean everything's magically going to be okay. I am who I am today because of all this. But why have I been wrong to suppress these memories whenever they surfaced? Should I have done more to honour the memory of this young lad? Hell, I never even learned his name. When I got to the underpass, I wasn't sure what to expect. I wasn't even certain it was going to be there. But it was. Exactly the same, just not absolutely caked in a young man's blood. My plan was to lay my flowers down, have a moment and be gone. As it turns out, I wasn't the only person who had the same idea. It was like a meadow. There were that many flowers, all on brand too. Green flowers, white flowers, orange flowers. Made me feel a knob with a bunch of petunias in my hand, but I digress. Turns out his memory was alive and well all this time. I didn't need to have tortured myself and worried about preserving his memory, because so many people had already done it. Each bunch of flowers represented a life lived in the honour of one lost. Community, paying tribute to a man taken by someone who spent every moment causing terror and mayhem in pursuit of what? Those flowers represented a town that refused to be terrified by him. Knowing that, a huge wave of relief swept over me. For the first time in decades, I no longer felt the weight and guilt and shame. I felt free. I laid my flowers down and I left. It's taken me so long, and I should have done it sooner if I'd had the bottle, but now I can finally close the book on this godforsaken chapter of my life. I wonder if any of the others came back. I still think about them every now and then. Occasionally I've wondered about making contact so we could meet and come to terms with everything, but it all felt a bit too Stephen King for my liking, so I thought best not. Anyway, I wouldn't have the foggiest where to start. I don't even know if everyone's still alive, let alone where. But at the very least, I hope they're okay. And as for Snake Eyes, whether he's inside or free, or whether he feels any remorse or shame, wherever he is and whatever he's doing, well, I truly hope his days are as pleasant as he is.